Remember that game I'm making? I made some more progress, so here we are again. I didn't come up with a title though, that's still just game for the time being, but I'm working on it. And yes, I did recycle that animation. I like it. As you might remember from the previous video, I set a few goals for this one. Those goals were to make some camera mechanics and stuff that happens when the player dies. So let's see if I actually manage to do that. Before I can move the camera, I need some place to move the camera to. So I decided to make a few rooms. Instead of immediately jumping into the tilemap editor and placing some tiles, I decided to make a level design on paper first. I learned this tip while watching a video by Qware named I Made the Ultimate Level Creator, no programming required. In this video, Qware explains that he likes designing levels on paper first, before implementing them into the game. I liked that idea, so I decided to adopt the same process. Now the book that I use to quickly write stuff down while I'm making my game does not have graph paper, because I thought that would make some things look messier. So I couldn't just count squares and quickly drop in a level, and I wasn't planning on measuring out the screen and drawing it manually every time either. See, I'm mainly a programmer, and a good programmer is a lazy one. So I designed a tool to do all the measuring for me. I printed it out, and all I have to do now is trace the inside line and I get a rectangle of exactly the right shape and size in which I can design a level. I decided to design two rooms. One would be something like a bonus level for a collectible, while the other one would simply be the progress through. I didn't think much of difficulty yet, since this is all temporary. The real level design is saved for later. So with my design in hand and my mouse in the other, I opened Godot and started drawing the levels. I did some playtesting to figure out how the player would behave in the levels I designed, and quickly realized that I had some tweaking to do. But it didn't take too long before I had two new, fully playable rooms for the player to traverse. Now that I've put these rooms on their place in the map, it was finally time to get the camera to move from one place to another. Surprisingly, teleporting the camera to its desired location and simply turning the smoothing up results in a fluid motion from one room to another. Now all we have to do is detect when we want to teleport. A few area 2Ds later, and that's exactly what we can do. The camera system is now completely functional. That barely took any effort at all, and it really made a big difference. Something else that takes barely any effort and would make a big difference is for you, the kind viewer, to leave a like on this video, write a comment down below, please the almighty YouTube algorithm, and if you really enjoy this content, maybe even hit that subscribe button. Now the second thing I wanted to be able to achieve is for the player character to be able to die. I know this sounds a bit morbid, but don't be alarmed, no actual VOPs were harmed in the making of this video. If it's possible for the player to die, there's a good chance they also want to respawn somewhere, or else it would make for a pretty difficult game. So difficult in fact that news outlets might even start calling it Dark Souls. So after adding a respawn point at every possible entrance or exit of a level, the player had to be able to die. When pressing the B button on my controller, the player now perishes and is respawned at the checkpoint they last visited. This also happens when you touch spikes, because as we all know, spikes make you go ouch. After treating Bob like this, I think he finally deserves a visual upgrade. My brother offered to help with the art of my game and he came up with this design. So I went and put this little mage into my game and he fits right in. Some things in games have impact. To portray that, most games use camera shake. I think that's a great technique, so I'm gonna implement it too. I made sure I'm able to adjust the amount of X and Y shake individually in case an impact is directional, like the dash for example. Currently, the one glaring issue is that Bob is standing completely still, so let's fix that. I'll go ahead and add some animations. This means that I have to draw Bob over here more than 50 times to account for all the animation frames. After then implementing the sprite sheet into the game and setting it all up, I could make all the separate animations. The next step is to web all these animations together in a messy looking animation tree and activate them all at the right time through a bunch of messy code. With that done, we've got some movement, and this is really starting to look like something you'd call a game. Now that he has some life, I feel like Bob over here needs a bit more of a flashy name, so if you have any ideas, let me know in the comments. Finally, I added a 2D light to the player. This adds a little more contrast between the player and the level, and it also creates a bit more ambience, which looks nice. Now since Godot's lighting system isn't very well optimized yet and basically does a separate rendering pass for every light in a scene, I have two options if I want to add a bunch of lights in my levels. Either I find a way to fake lights and just pretend they're there, with the use of a shader or something, or I wait with adding my lights until Godot 4.0 is released, which has a completely new rendering engine, including an overhaul of how lights work. This will massively improve lighting performance. But that's a question for another day, since lighting isn't on the planning yet. What is on the planning though is adding secret rooms. Apart from that, I don't know what I'll be working on next. If you want to know what kind of progress I make in the next devlog, subscribe and ring the bell to get notified when I release the next video. Until then, stay creative and I'll see you in the next one.